Time zone, sweet world. It is Tuesday, January 7th, 2025. Welcome into Atham Online, a broadcast about the video games industry. Hello, my name is Atham. I am a video gamist. I play video games on the internet. Sometimes I talk about them. Often when I do, it comes from a financial and economic perspective, as those are fields that I work in and have worked in. Today, I wanted to get started. Tuesdays, I want to talk about some things in the news that have caught my interest. And, just generally things that are worthy of talking about and maybe some information sharing that can happen. So let's get right into it. I want to keep this kind of tight and focused as I can. As usual, not always as prepared as I want to be. But the first thing that I kind of wanted to get to was an article in GameFile that is Stephen Tottilo's independent publication. And so Stephen has written about Call of Duty's massive development budgets revealed, $700 million for Black Ops Cold War. So this is over there at GameFile. They have gone over a court filing where, hey, thanks, Holly. Thanks for the alert. Appreciate it. A court filing that has not been previously reported, where Patrick Kelly, the current head of creative on Call of Duty, said that the three Call of Duty games released between 2015 to 2020 cost somewhere between $450 million to $700 million to make. The disclosed totals are the highest development costs ever reported by a major video game company, and top just about anything that has been estimated by analysts, says Totilo. And he goes on to say Sony pegged the... to find comparators, it says that Sony has pegged development cost of the 2020 game The Last of Us Part 2 around $220 million. I think we've seen that in some other places as well. So when he looks at Call of Duty development costs from Kelly's filing, so Black Ops 3 in 2015, this had they say investment of over $450 million in development costs over the game's life cycle, which includes, pre-production, production, release, and then post-release support. Modern Warfare in 2019 have spent over $640 million in development costs throughout the life cycle, and that has 41 million copies sold. Black Ops 3 2015 had 43 million copies sold. And Black Ops Cold War 2020, Treyarch and Raven Software ultimately spent over $700 million in development costs over the game's lifecycle, and that had 30 million copies sold. So when he goes into the 700 million figure for Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, the 2020 title, he talks about a development cycle of at least 2 years being suggested. And since they are development costs, they wouldn't include marketing, which can equal or exceed the cost of the development cost. And so if you're in a world where the marketing cost at least equals the development cost for this, then you're talking about 700 million times 2, which would be at least $1.4 billion of costs. He goes on to compare that to CD Projekt's Red Cyberpunk 2077, which has an estimated cost of around $300 million to make, not including marketing. And that came from piecing together disclosures that the Polish studio there made after the game released. And going back to The Last of Us Part 2, the $220 million figure, that came from a court filing in 2023. And there's also been, so the Spider-Man 2 game also had a figure, and that was from a hack of Sony data. And that was 2023 game that cost $300 million to develop. Another comparator here, Star Citizen, a crowdfunded game that has been in development for over a decade. Disclosed costs of $600 million through to 2022. That includes marketing, though. And so when you come back to Call of Duty and you think about it, well, Tatilla goes on to say, it sells very well. It's been a top selling game in the U.S. For each year for most of the past decade. It's also one of the most content heavy games that has regular content post release. And oftentimes when you see those Call of Duty games released, then you would see Activision Blizzard boasting substantial increased earnings that would then be related back to Call of Duty, primarily driven by the Call of Duty release. So that, it helps. It was just a relevant thing to look at because we've been having a little bit of a discussion more and more around the rising costs of game development and what's driving that, and what, how does that break down? And so, it made me think of some other things that have been out here in the news that we've been talking about recently, including this article from Game World Observer. So this is by Evgeny Obedkov that Ben had shared in Discord. So Andy Gavin, the co-founder of Naughty Dog, was talking about the decision making around selling Naughty Dog to Sony and the stress of financing ballooning budgets. And so in that article, there's also Jordan Midler had reported something there on Video Games Chronicle as well, talking about development costs for some of Naughty Dog's games since or between 1990s to the early 2000s. So you start with Crash Bandicoot in 1994 to 1996, and a figure here was $1.6 million. You had Jak and Daxter, the precursor legacy, 1999 to 2001, and that was a cost of $15 million, $15 million. And then Jak 3, 2004 title, had a cost of around $45 to $50 million. And so when Naughty Dog was making that decision, they were talking about, Gavin was talking about, the studio was still financing every single project, and the stress of financing ballooning budgets independently was enormous. And he described it as kind of a systematic issue in the AAA development space. And so when you look at that, I guess to me it comes down to the main driver of increasing costs being the size and the scope of these projects. I would be curious to know what this latest Indiana Jones game cost to make, because of what a huge production it ends up looking like, not only visually but just in the systems of how that games work, and just how the audio production and the audio design and all that kind of stuff. So then, that's one aspect of it. Then another kind of example of this, I went back to another article in Game World Observer, again, Evgeny Obedkov, and this was talking, it looked like an interview with Saber Interactive's Tim Willits on bloated budgets of AAA games. And the quote here is what business are we in when you fail if you sell less than 5 million copies? And so this was in the context of Space Marine 2, which had, back when Space Marine 2 launched, it had rapidly sold. I'm trying to pull the figure here. I for some reason, I had 2 billion copies. Yeah, 2 million copies. Space Marine 2 had sold over 2 million copies at launch. But in this kind of little article here, they were talking about, or at least Tim Willits was talking about, rising costs as an industry-wide problem, with games, especially those produced in the U.S., having bloated budgets, making it less and less realistic for developers and publishers to recoup their investments. And so he was saying, from Saber's perspective, that's why they try to optimize costs and keep the pipeline as sustainable as possible. And he even pointed to games like SnowRunner, which is, he says, literally a game about driving trucks through mud. that's it. I'm done. I just described the game. 15 million people played it because the experience is perfect. But this kind of thing made me think of the importance or like this idea that having a well-defined core gameplay loop that you just focus on is a viable thing to do, and that you don't have to have everything under the sun, and therefore don't have to spend crazy amounts of money on everything under the sun to have a successful video game. So yeah, that was just I wanted to pull together all this kind of disparate pieces of information there, just to step back and think, like how does it get this big? So we're when we're looking at these kind of AAA game budgets, we're looking at costs that are ranging from anywhere from $300 to $500 million, and it looks like even all the way up to $700 million in development costs that don't include marketing. And well, I mean, the first thing that you have to think about clearly is salaries, and not only salary, I mean salary of large teams that are going to have developers, artists, quality assurance. Although I guess maybe some games more and more skimp on QA. I don't know. Producers, and more kind of specialized staff, or like more need to contract out specialized staff. And the nature of the industry is that a lot of these roles are high skilled professions that require quite a bit of either education as a proxy for skill level, or just a high level of skill that therefore commands a relatively higher level of wage, let's say. Certainly, I would say, like a wage and salary level that would be above the median of a country. I think the median salary in Canada is maybe like 36,000 Canadian dollars last I checked. I know the UK, I think it's like 31,000 pounds, I think. But these salaries would be much more than that in general, especially if you're looking at development staff, I think. Of course, the next kind of big chunk of cost is going to come from technology costs. Either you will have to have internally developed engines, or you will have to license the use of engines and pay either royalty fees or fixed fees to that game engine provider. And then you're going to have a bunch of money tied up in hardware as well. I wish that we could get more clarity around what marketing and promotion looks like. But from this article from Totilo, it looks like, many of these development cost figures do not include marketing, nor, and I think that makes sense. They typically wouldn't from an accounting perspective anyway. And so, that's interesting because that means that, you could ostensibly take some of these figures, and if you can verify that they do not include marketing, then you can probably just double the figure and use that as your ballpark to say that, well, okay, if this thing costs $300 million in development costs, then, ballpark marketing expense will also be $300 million. And then, the other couple of things here is you have to think about what kind of cost will come there. I was saying, contracting out, so outsourcing, right? So outsourcing for art, for voice acting, for motion capture, and any kind of special effects stuff that you have to do. And I guess now, more and more nowadays, you're seeing some more artificial intelligence technologies creeping into these spaces, but certainly not as an industry-wide trend. I think there are some developers, or some publishers rather, that are more heavily juiced up about doing that kind of stuff. Certainly Electronic Arts comes to mind. And then the final thing to think about is post-launch support. Because many of these games, either they will be live service, or they will have live service components, and they will have a need for ongoing support on patches to fix things. And a lot of these games release with problems that need to be fixed as well. But then also they'll have their kind of post-launch roadmaps that will include DLC expansions and all this kind of stuff that, of course has a price tag on it, but has a cost attached to it as well. So it's this combination of labor cost, cutting edge technology, big marketing campaign, and a post-launch commitment that adds up to reach these kind of totals. Not just the cost of producing the game; it is about the surrounding infrastructure and the support that the game needs to make it from prototype to beta to release to post-launch. And that's, I guess, why, the scope and the nature of everything that's needed, that's why they keep climbing into these kind of crazy figures. So I thought that was interesting. That's certainly something that I'm going to be keeping an eye on and getting as much information as I can on in the future as we move on. So the other couple of things that caught my attention this week, Helldivers 2, Arrowhead Studios is working on their next game, and they were out there on socials talking about some games that they or some concepts that they hadn't kind of released before. People on social media were asking about expectations and desires for what the next Arrowhead game will be. And so trying to see, Chief Operating Officer Johan, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, Pilestedt. I think he was the one. Yeah, he was the one who had released old concepts of a game that they wanted to make, and this looked like a Star Fox. It was a concept for a game Arrowhead wanted to make, Eagles of Democracy, which looks like a Star Fox based in the Helldivers universe, which is interesting. And some of that concept stuff looks really cool. So who knows? Who knows what they're actually going to do? It certainly might not be that. They also wanted to do a remake of the 1990 retro twin stick shooter Smash TV. I try really hard with Smash TV. I have trouble with Smash TV, but I don't know. It's cool, but certainly, I got more work to do to get some retro achievements in that. Let's just say that. So that was a cool thing that was out there. But the other thing that I wanted to focus in on relates to Helldivers, but also a couple of other Sony properties is, sorry, just trying to pull up this article here. So this is Rachel Kaser from VentureBeat, GamesBeat. So Sony has really revealed more details about its upcoming game-to-screen adaptations, including new adaptations. It has revealed, so this is at CES 2025, they are making a film based on Helldivers 2, and they are partnering with Crunchyroll to make an anime adaptation of Ghost of Tsushima. There's little information currently available about these, both of these things that are in production. But Helldivers will be a live action film. There's, I don't have too much to get into on this, aside to say, this makes sense and it's completely in line with what we've explored in the past with Sony, and in particular, what the chief executive officer Kenichiro Yoshida and the chief financial officer Hiroki Totoki, who is widely seen to be as Yoshida's successor, have talked about in interviews with journalistic publications. when they talk about their overall strategy, they call it their creation shift strategy. And this goes back to the idea that they find themselves to be weak in having original IP. Totoki has been quoted in the past saying, whether it's for games, films, or anime, we don't have that much IP that we fostered from the beginning. And so I don't think this one is simply a case of saying, we have a capacity over here to make movies, so we should do it. I do think that it's just a little bit more nuanced to say, I think what they're doing is they're looking at the preferences and tastes of their existing and potential customers. And then they're looking at how they can integrate different lines of their business to create something that will have value, and then ultimately something that will generate greater returns overall. Rather than if they had dumped all of that investment costs into original or existing IP, specifically in video games. And so it's a little bit of a diversification thing, but it's also a little bit of we're trying to make sure that we integrate all these different things that we have going on at Sony. But it's also a part of the overall strategy that company has. And I think, it goes to the other thing that it makes me think of is when you look at games and, you look at TV and you look at movies, and I'm trying to think of any other leisure activity, but all these things kind of exist in if you just look at leisure budget, and never mind even money. Money's certainly a factor to consider, but let's just simplify and just look at it from a time perspective. You only have so much time to spend, and you have a leisure budget of certain things that you can do, and then you will allocate your time to doing certain things. And if you spend all of your time playing video games, then you're going to have less time to spend on movies or TV or whatever else is included in all of the things that you could do in your leisure budget. And so, if you're at a place like Sony that has the capacity to make all kinds of different entertainment things, then it starts to make sense to say, look, there are a bunch of consumers that are out here that certainly we're serving the video game consumers over here with the PlayStation and all that kind of stuff. But there are also all these other consumers that might have different preferences, and they might prefer movies, or they might prefer film and TV to video games. And maybe they'll spend less time and less money over there, but they'll spend money and time over here. And so they must be looking at this thinking, there is some sort of demand that can be captured over here. And if we can capture them over here with movies and film and whatever, then we can bring them into our ecosystem. And then if we do that, then we can, maybe we'll get some of them to transition over to video games, and maybe they'll go and they'll explore all this stuff, wonderful stuff that we have to offer over here. I think that's a part of their strategy here, right? So, and that's just kind of what it made me think and what I wanted to mention, because I don't think it's as simple as saying we simply have the capacity, therefore we should do it. It's a little bit more nuanced, as I say. So that, of course, got me to the next thing, which is so Jordan Middler over at Video Games Chronicle, or VGC, also reported on Apple reportedly stopped production on its 3500 Vision Pro due to lack of demand. So I think it might have been on, was it December 31st? I can't remember when it was, but it was recent when we were talking about the PSVR 2, as PlayStation's VR 2 headset, how that had stopped production because they had overstock of products that were not moving as fast as they thought they would. So this was interesting to see because it's another example from a different producer out here that are stopping production for the same reason. So they have ended production of Apple Vision Pro headset due to low demand and a high amount of unsold stock. Surprise! And even further in the past, we had talked about Financial Times reporting on this on the Apple Vision Pro. They had internal sales targeting of 1 million units, but then had to slash that figure in more than half due to complexity of design and manufacturing difficulties. Kind of compounding this, a second generation Apple Vision Pro is in development, but production has stalled. And a statement here is that Apple could release an incremental update to the product with limited changes to its physical design. So this is, I think, important information to know, but not so surprising. The part that continually intrigues me and kind of dumbfounds me are some of the miscalculations that are made here around how they forecast demand for these virtual reality headsets. Because I think that there are signs and there are signals all over the place that suggest that this augmented reality or virtual reality or mixed reality headset isn't as viable as was once thought possible. And I think, as I think about it, I think there are like three things to note on why that is. I think the first thing is a high cost of entry. Certainly this product is ridiculous, $3,500 price tag. That immediately confines you to the highest of the highest of people with incomes and ability to pay, right? Ability to have these outsized leisure budgets and pay. I can't afford that thing, certainly, and I earn more than the median wage. I'm not rich, but I think you understand what the point that I'm trying to make there. The other thing that's important to note with these technologies is just the safety concern of using it, health and safety around it. People, when they use this for extended periods of time and they're moving around, like swinging their arms, moving their heads around, and not even just like, flinging a controller into a TV or falling over or whatever. That's certainly one thing. But the other thing is just the susceptibility to get motion sick and to feel nauseous and, to have that nausea stay after you take the damn thing off. Right, is kind of a huge thing there. And then the third thing is just, as the technology hasn't had as much uptake as some of these producers would have hoped, there hasn't been very good development support for the games themselves, and relatively less investment in the development of the games. And any of the investors that would be throwing money at this stuff, I have instead chosen to go over into AI and dump all their money there. So, and I think, the other thing to link here as a trend is to say, okay, well, this has been what's been happening in virtual reality, and you see some of the producers stop their production and even stop development. And then you start to look at all these reports that are coming out about, the Xboxes, the Sonys of the world, and all, Lenovo, creating their handheld devices and trying to crack into this. And I think that is a much more viable market. So we'll have to see kind of how that progresses. But it looks like when I look at all this, I kind of look of a transition of where people in this space who are making these decisions are starting to curtail what they think they can achieve with virtual reality, and are starting to look at what they can achieve with handheld devices. So that was an interesting thing as well. And we're almost done here. I think the only last thing that I have here was kind of out of theme with all the things that I've talked about previously. And that is over at VGC again, WWE 2K23 gets its final takedown as the game servers are discontinued. After being pulled from sale last year, WWE 2K23's online functionality has been disabled. So they had announced this last September that the title would be getting its final takedown. So now all online functions, online matches, community creations, all of that are done. You won't be able to access any online game mode after this point. If you already own the game, you'll be able to play all offline modes. The 2K23 server shutdown represents the shortest operation period for a WWE game. Like 2K22 support, 2K23 servers were closed less than 22 months after the game's release. By comparison, 2K19, so WWE 2K19 online support was closed almost 45 months after release. 2K20 support ended about 32 months after release. I think the main thing here is to say buyer beware. I think, this makes me think about when we're making these digital purchases, what exactly are we buying? Are we buying a product? Are we buying a service? Or are we buying some kind of composite thing? Or are we just buying a license to use something? And how long are we going to have access to that thing? And whatever the price tag was on 2K23, I don't even, let's see, what's the 2K23 retail price? Looks like standard edition $60, and I'm guessing that's US. And a premium version might have been there for $70 US. So $60 US means maybe $80 Canadian. So, but if you were back in 2K23 and you're facing that price tag of let's say 60 US, your assumption at the time, I think most people, won't be looking at this stuff in depth, and we'll look at that price tag and we'll go like, well, okay, yeah, that's $60, and I'm going to get this, and I'm going to get this online feature, and I'm going to get this online feature, and that's going to exist in perpetuity. Turns out that's not the case. And so, your assumption that it's, anyway, so that assumption is not valid. So as you look forward to 2K25, and if you're looking into getting that, I guess, just be careful about it and understand that you might be purchasing something that has only a limited amount of offline capability that you will have forever, and a time-limited online support, capacity there with, maybe a 2-year window of online support. And I think that's kind of strange. It's kind of, on the one hand, I can understand why, they shut that stuff down, but it just, I don't know. I can't help but feel like the consumer's getting kind of a raw deal on that, especially if they're not made aware that this is going to be the case for the thing that they're buying. And that's it for the news. We did the news. It's Tuesday. Tuesday is news day. So hey, I hope you found that interesting, or at least somewhat useful. That's going to do it for that component. I wanted to play some more Disco Elysium, so I think I'm going to get into that. Let's take a quick break while I get Disco started, and then we'll come back to play.